Hey guys, Zibboyeye or just Zib is fine, and today we're continuing our look at the Saw series with the next installment, Saw 4. But as per usual, at least as of episode 2, let's see who's behind this film. Wano and Juan decided to give up their pen and pass it on to Thomas Fenton, Patrick Melton, and Marcus Dunstan. Wano will continue to be executive producer of this series as he's always been, but we might see him back in the writer's seat for another Saw project later down the line. Juan didn't part with the series either. He'll be an executive producer of this series as well from this point forward. Lastly, Darren Lynn Bousman kept comfy in his director chair, but this would be the last Saw movie that he worked on. Sadly, because not much will go on behind the scenes of this series from this point onward, that might be the last documentary segment I do in this retrospective. But because I have to prolong the review even longer, let's talk about my hopes for this movie. You may look at what I said in my Saw 2 review and answer Lawrence's return, but after his lawsuit against Saw, the third movie's intention to have him that fell through, and Jigsaw's death diminishing the chance of a personal plot between the two, I don't expect nor do I necessarily want his return. That's not to say everything looks bleak, however. With both John and Amanda dead, it's a blank slate. Could we get another whodunit plot resembling that of the first movie which I oh so adored? And with that, I'm Zibboyeye, I already said that, and let's start the review. So the movie opens with John Kramer's wrinkly ballsack. Well, that's different. I said I wanted to see more of him after the first movie, but not this much. Can you imagine going to the first showing of Saw and saying, "You're gonna see this guy's crotch 3 movies from now"? Surely it can't get any... Yeah, that sounds about right. The first movie's opening investigation gore scenes played an important role. They established the stakes of the game if one were to lose. In other words, the suspense the movie was able to achieve is built on these scenes. But this is just... It's for those who want the gore, which is not what I watched this series for. But even for those who do watch the series for that, this is the goriest scene in the movie, and it's the first one. I can imagine for them, it's like dessert before supper. The hell? Jigsaw swallowed a tape during Lynn's game? What if he choked on it? He was willing to jeopardize Lynn's game just for this? Now to the plot. Oh, I guess it's opening kill time. I've always found it weird when Jigsaw messes with the bodies of his subjects for the sake of his games. Jigsaw finds himself innocent because the lives lost in his games are done by the player's own actions, but it'd be hard to say these people's injuries are of their own. But overall, this opening kill scene isn't so bad. Oh, it can be written out of the script easily and holds little relevance to the plot, but it's not that bad because, I'm gonna fast forward through it. Our main character this time around is Officer Riggs, who has gotten a bit of a personality overhaul. His hastiness is a big part in this movie, which is inconsistent with the emotional and self-control he shows towards the possibility of Matthew's death in the last movie. Enter FBI, Strom and Perez.
This wasn't done by Amanda. Carrie weighed approximately 130 pounds.
So she weighed too much for Amanda to pick her up, huh? What about Daniel? Okay, he's not an adult, then how'd she kidnap Adam?
Kramer with his brains, not brawn.
Hoffman makes a good rebuttal saying,
He could have rigged pulleys.
Bringing to light just how contrived and unnecessary this assistant to Jigsaw is, but yes, this is the only clue that there was someone other than John or Amanda involved. Now, it would have been cool if we kept finding differing methodologies and techniques to distinguish this Jigsaw from John, but this is it. The basis for this Jigsaw is just how much he can bench.
Forgive my lack of ambiguity. I just thought you needed a bath.
The main plot is Riggs trying to save Hoffman and Matthews. Matthews had a meaningful death in the last movie. His dying words spurred the character change in Amanda that the plot of Saw 3 revolved around. To retcon his death devalues the impact it had, as well as the life of the character, because now the audience thinks, well, if he dies again, what's stopping him from coming back? And well, let's just say I hope they brought him back for a good reason. Speaking of the dead, this scenario is better geared towards Carrie. We've seen her interact more with Matthews than Riggs did. The audience would have more investment in her character as well as her attempt to save Matthews than Riggs, but she just needed to be the slightly late opening kill. Riggs is in this game due to his obsession with catching Jigsaw. Now, some people may be wondering the difference between Carrie being put into a game which I critiqued and Riggs being put into a game, which I'm fine with. The difference is Carrie's attributes contradicted Jigsaw's claims, whereas we see Riggs' obsession cause him to hastily run into a crime scene and spend overtime examining evidence. Although what we see of Riggs isn't an example of an extreme obsession, it's more than what we had towards Carrie, and therefore it makes sense why Jigsaw would put him in a game. Jigsaw is nuts, but that's not an excuse to disregard logic. When critiquing a character, you should critique him in accordance to his beliefs. Now, if someone were obsessed, it would be Tap. Yeah, why didn't Jigsaw make him play a game?
I want Detective Tap. I want to play a game.
No, I take that back. Okay, let's just get back to the movie. I could just shoot off your ponytail and save you, but shooting the gears is the more promising option. In terms of real criticism, I don't care if Riggs can shoot her ponytail off. My beef with this is that Riggs has a gun! In the previous movies, none of the protagonists have had the upper hand because the easier the danger is to come to them, the more tense and more suspenseful their story can be. But not Riggs. He's packing heat. Do you really feel scared for him when he has such a means of defense? Also, many of the traps in this movie use magical, self-running gears. My problem with this is that, although the Saw series has dabbled in such devices occasionally, as of Saw 3, the machinery scaled up to the point where it jeopardized believability. I'm pretty much repeating my Saw 3 review, specifically the meat grinder scene, but what we've seen Jigsaw build doesn't support contraptions of this scale. I'd be willing to believe it if the world we were introduced to in the first movie had machines like this, but it didn't. Riggs' game takes him around town assisting in jigsaw traps. I hate this setup. Every other game the narrative has followed has been in a closed space. The previous settings of the movies were able to give a sense of confinement and restraint, fitting for the games they force people to play. But the free-roaming main character in this movie absolutely fails to give this key sense of the series. Another problem I have with Riggs' story is the same with Jeff's in Saw 3. The writers try to build a hatred for the people Riggs has to put in games, but they're introduced as soon as they leave, and there's no time to build any emotional investment whatsoever. Not only that, but the this game, then this game, then this game segmented structure of the plot hampers fluidity. The movie tries to trick you into thinking this guy's Jigsaw, and it may have worked. If the first Saw didn't do the exact same thing, I don't feel bad for skipping to the ending here. He's in a game to make other people play a game. Same mislead, same twist. It's sort of like when you're writing an essay and realize you wrote something similar before, so you plagiarize your own work. It's uncreative and unsurprising. Then we're introduced to Jill Tuck, John's ex-wife, who's pretty much the device they use to give more of John's past. Well, what will the episode of Days of Our John be today?
I got a surprise for you.
Wow, my mother was right about you.
Yeah, honey. Want some company?
Thanks for the cameo. Your check will be in the mail. This guy kills their baby.
You can't help them. They have to help themselves.
Wow, so Jigsaw started putting people in games because of his cancer, but no, he did it because of his failed suicide, but no, he did it because of his baby's murder. The next scene involves a wife and her abusive husband in the game. It's understandable if you find this to be the worst scene in the movie, even the whole series. Even if they're trying to say she should have spoken up, it feels wrong for them to put the victim of abuse in the position of those who don't value life. Strom later investigates the scene. What? Jigsaw's always been able to plan ahead, but he'd have to be clairvoyant to get the trajectory and placement of these people just perfect. And what did this have to do with cherishing life? Yes, get closer to the ticking object. Back to John's past.
Those buildings we're working on.
What buildings?
We're partners.
What?
Low-income families.
Low-income homes? Wait, why does John hate this? What? So kill, backstory, kill. Then all of a sudden we're thrusted into dialogue around a 5-second real estate plot, introduced only halfway through the movie? This is the not Jigsaw character, by the way, as well as the guy from the opening kill. If John's mad at him for doing whatever with the buildings, why not have this just be his only game? Why have the opening kill at all? Did we really need this Chinese festival to explain why John wears a pig mask? Saw 2 explained the symbolism behind Jigsaw's jigsaw cut, but this doesn't tie into his character, it's just something he picked up on the side of the road. I will admit John's first game being more self-centered and revenge-driven than what follows is unexpected and interesting. You'd think it's going to explore new ground with his first trap failing, but nah, all according to the plan. Planning has always been the ability he's excelled at, but this is just ridiculous. ridiculous. I can give the first movie some slack because of what I like to call aura of mystery. You know, that stunned feeling you get when the killer is revealed. Well, this actually allows the writers to do more with the character. You think to yourself, well, he fooled me, what else can he do? And you're more willing to suspend disbelief of their actions. But John, especially his humanistic qualities, has garnered more and more focus, peaking in this movie that we know too much of him. He lost his aura of mystery and has become just a regular character. Characters are human and humans are fallible, yet John, who lost his aura of mystery, isn't. His humanization removes the awe brought from his mystery, yet his exceedingly perfect plans remove the ability to identify with him as a character. Oh my god, I can't believe he's in the game too! The climax manages to build suspense. It's announced someone is coming and the scene builds and builds to make the viewer question who will it be? Riggs? Strom? Or no! This is it! He's coming to ruin this ending too! Oh wait, the big twist of the movie is that it takes place during Saw 3. I love this twist conceptually because it flips the whole setting on its head. It's a twist of a scale that hadn't been reached in the series up to this point. But for such a grand twist, there's some cracks in the support. Saw 4 says,
Carrie was gone for 4 days.
meaning the events with Lynn happened 4 days after Carrie's death. The smooth single-shot transition in the third movie pretty much said meanwhile, not 4 days after. The 4 days dialogue mainly serves as a time buffer to excuse how the cops know about Amanda. Also, it said that Matthews has been missing for 6 months. Yeah, that makes Riggs a bit too hopeful for Matthews' survival at the beginning of Saw 3. And at that point, they would have questioned why Jigsaw would keep Matthews for 6 months. It's dialogue meant to reinforce your misconception of the story, but it does not fit in universe. Not only is there a chink in the armor, but the material itself is weak too. The only foreshadowing that builds up to this twist is when the officer says
Another doctor went missing from the hospital.
and this changes nothing of the story's direction. Compare this to the pin in the first movie. The doctor's pin foreshadowed that Jigsaw was a patient at the hospital, but it also influenced the cops to take interest in Lawrence, which motivated Tapp to send Adam to spy on the doctor, which is Adam and Lawrence's whole interconnected past. Just this pin affects so much of the story, but with the missing person report, this guy just walks in, says it, and walks out. And that's the last it comes into play until the ending. Well, let's see what they do with this twist. Oh my god, they did it! They killed him! They killed Jeff! This movie's only going up from here. So, you brought Matthews back, devalued his death, just so you can kill him again? There's some foreshadowing to Jeff's death in an earlier scene.
Agent Strong will soon take the life of an innocent man.
So on top of the spaghetti that was the games of Saw 3, this was also part of it? There's so many variables Jigsaw had to account for. What if Strom jumped in the way of the blast and got shot himself? And the only way Jeff is innocent is if he learned his lesson and didn't kill John. But in that case, that means Jigsaw was fine with Jeff dying even if he grew from his game. So much for if you pass your game, you've earned your life. Let's just get this over with. Who's Jigsaw? Well, it turns out it's Hoffman, and that's the movie. Although I don't... Wait, this music, is it... Oh my god, it is! It's X-Japan! How's the same movie that showed Jigsaw's Ghibli's the same movie that got X-Japan out of retirement? I don't have a problem with Hoffman being Jigsaw, I just have some issues with how it was handled. One, we get little reason why. In the first movie they explain John's in it because of his cancer and to make people appreciate life. The second movie explains Amanda's in it because she's thankful for John and wants a legacy. But this movie explains nothing about Hoffman's motivations. Two, the foreshadowing could have been a bit stronger or more abundant. One piece of foreshadowing relies on a trick of how the scene is presented, which I admit is clever, but that just leaves us with a trick of the narrative, one snippet of dialogue, and that he can supposedly lift someone up. Actually, in the third movie, you can see Hoffman hide some evidence, which is pretty good foreshadowing. I think this, along with the snippet of dialogue, creates a stronger basis for his reveal, but it doesn't change how I feel about it. Why not? Isn't the big twist that it's all one big game? The two movies feel like two separate entities. Saw 4 is simple, the characters are little more than cattle for the slaughter. It forgives the complex characters and emotions Saw 3 was able to achieve, while still being gory here and there. And two-part stories like this should reinforce each other like they build up to a bigger whole. But little of the meat of either 3 or 4 have much intersection, and whenever they do, it's quick and doesn't affect the direction of their individual stories. Even in terms of the ending, the most Saw 4 changes is killing off a character whose story was already concluded. Because of it, neither movie feels like they play a necessary or complementary role to the other, and strangely, I'm thankful for that. Outside of the returning detective, most of this movie doesn't compromise what Saw 3 gave the fans. John and Amanda's relationship isn't rewritten, they're still dead, there's little alluding to a third Jigsaw or continuation at all, and what is, doesn't play a big role to leave you hanging. Saw 3 is still a sufficient conclusion to the series, and in that sense, Saw 4 can be considered a new beginning, and unlike Wano Wan and Buzman, the writers of this movie, or at least two of them, set to stick around with the series for its foreseeable future at that point. And that leads to one of my only compliments about the movie. They knew to plan ahead. Keep in mind these scenes in particular. And so, we've begun the new saga, or Saw-ga. Yeah. As a fan of the original trilogy, the least I can say about Saw 4 is that it's a bad first impression. But is that indicative of the future? Find out next time when I look at Saw 5. This has been Zibboyeye. I still haven't settled on an outro. Bye bye.